If you're looking for a quick, cheap, and easy way to up your food photography, take a look at this tutorial because I'm going to be showing you how to do it in 5 simple steps. On screen, I'm going to be showing you the objectives of today. Number 1, 5 steps to take your food photography up to the next level. Number 2, use what you already have, what's handy. Follow these simple steps. And number 3, storytelling through elements. Thanks so much to Kristina Rouse, our photographer for today. She is actually a graphic designer, and you can see how beautifully she composes these images. I was super excited to receive these photos and edit them and create this special tutorial for you. She takes these photos for her mom because her mom cooks, and it's going to be for a soon-to-be-released vegan cookbook. So thank you so much, Kristina. Let's take a look at the tutorial. I actually created 4 food photography presets just for you, so you can speed up your editing process, and I'm going to show you exactly how to use them because one preset sometimes doesn't fit all photos. So let's start with our 5 steps. Step number 1 is visualize. What's this photo going to be used for? I want to show you Kristina's photo because she really thought things out. Here's Lightroom, and I'm going to open up the first photo. Now, as you can see, she left a lot of space up on the top, and that is because she is going to write copy on this area. She's going to use it as a menu board, so all of the recipes are going to be right on top, which is super smart. Now, to edit them for this tutorial, I'm going to crop them in as if my purpose was to share on social media. Now, the good thing about having all of the space on top is that whenever you do want to use it to add a recipe or copy or create any type of ad, you're going to have this space already here, rather than if you take the photo up close. Afterwards, once you take the photo, there's no going back. Either you retake the complete photo shoot, or you're gonna have to composite with Photoshop some elements. So the easiest way to do this is to actually just leave some space around the elements if you'd like, if you think that there's a remote possibility that you might use this for a different purpose. She did this with all of the photos, which is great. So here are just a few of hers, and all the way at the end, there's only 5. These last 5 are mine. Step number 2 is storytelling, and we're going to use our background and visual elements to tell a story. So food photography is all about how you tell your story. On this particular photo that I'm showing you on the screen, we have some vegetables inside of a basket, and they are on top of a wooden tabletop. So perhaps they were just picked out to start cooking for this occasion. And it's a very rustic feeling as well. Now I'm going to show you a different example. This tabletop looks like a picnic, and this background may look like a fence, like an outdoor fence. So for these hot summer days that are coming up, you probably are going to want to have a really good tasty option like this vegan veggie salad that you have over here from Kristina's mom. In this photo, I really liked how she used this particular plate because it has so much personality. It brings personality to the photo, and it has all of the ingredients, so we know exactly what's inside of the salad, and we're probably going to want to eat it as well. I'm hungry already. Step number 3, angles matter. Flat light photography and close-ups. Let's go back to Lightroom and take a look at this photo. We already know that Kristina used these photos to add recipes, and this is why she's leaving all of this space. But if you're using it for social media, you might want to consider having a really tight close-up. So this is what I did over here, and you may notice as well that we have this area cropped, which is the wooden board. I really like to crop into elements when I'm doing food photography because I find that it's similar to fashion photography in the sense that it gives it a dynamism when the viewer is taking a look at the photo. I'm going to show you several examples of how I cropped these images, and I want you to see the impact that it has when we're cropping inside and changing the perspective, making everything bigger. So So we can see how the sandwich really starts taking first priority in the photo. We have this cutting board over here, and what I did was just do a really tight square crop. On this photo, I absolutely loved the elements that she used. They have so much story behind each and every one of them. From the spoons all the way to the details on the plates and the ingredients. However, I was missing some of that story because I got distracted with the background. So what I did was that I just really cropped inside, and I actually cut off some of the elements on the edges, and that tells a story that there's more to the table to only these elements that you see on the photo. So I'm gonna go back to this photo, and let's suppose that if I cropped like this, leaving all of the elements without a cropping, that gives the spectator a sense that that's everything that there is on the table and there's nothing else, which is actually the fact. That is a fact, as we can see. But we want to tell a story, and we want to play with our spectator's mind just to give them a little thing, a little fun, somewhat quelque chose. So this is why I cut out the edges. This photograph had a slight angle to it, so what I did, I adjusted and corrected the perspective to make the plate look a little bit more circular. So this gives it a sense of being like a flat lay photograph, and I absolutely love to use flat lay photography when we are doing food photography. Here's the before and the after, and it's such a quick and simple adjustment to do in Lightroom. I'm going to continue showing you different types of examples where cropping really does make a difference. Now on this photo, there's something very particular that I do want to show you, and this is why angles matter. If you take this photo as a flat lay photograph, it may look good, but you can also experiment with taking photos close up. I took with a regular and standard point and shoot, but I really went down and I went as close as my lens let me go, so it was like a macro photography, and you can see the difference between taking it from the top as a flat lay photograph versus a close up. I really liked having both of them because that gives it a dynamic sense to the viewer that we're always looking for. Step number 4 is special effects. Oh yeah! And it's simply a water spray and an oil spray. Take a look at this photo with the fresh mozzarella. Now the fresh mozzarella looks very flat, but if you have handy a small spray with water and a small spray with oil, you can just spray some of the oil and the water on top of the fresh mozzarella, and what that's going to do is going to give you a few highlights, and that's going to give the viewer a little bit more of richness to the photo, making us look at these tiny highlights and go back and forth, and it makes the food look more savory. It looks very delicious and fresh. So let's take a look at the before one more time. It looks more flat. And let's take a look one more time with the tiny highlights made by the oil and the water. You can definitely see a difference, and it's such a detail. And the secret to a really good photograph is in the details. So just with that tiny special effect, you're going to move mountains. Step number 5 is editing, and I created for you 4 free Lightroom presets made specially for food photography. And with these 4 Lightroom presets, we're going to edit 20 photos that I'm going to be showing you. And I'm going to prove to you how presets can speed up your workflow. So I have a total of 20 photos, and we're going to start with this sandwich image. Now the sandwich image, it looks so tasty and so delicious. Kristina's mom did such a good job. So what I want to do is really give it importance, and I'm going to crop in using a proportion of 8:10, and I'm going to make the sandwich bigger so it really has a lot of predominance in the photo. Now the 4 presets are going to be inside of a pack that is called Food Photography Reds and Greens. And that is because I created them especially to work with photos that have red tones as well as green tones in food photography. Oranges, pinks, and yellows also work. The first one is going to be contrast. So as I go and I place my mouse on top of the presets, you can automatically see a preview. And how quick is that? It's insane. The second one is bright and poppy. The third one is airy and bright. And the fourth one are deep colors and high contrast. Now for this particular one, I'm going to use contrast, but I want to show you the before, and you can see how the bread looks a little bit dull and the overall image looks a little bit gray. So these presets are really to enhance the reds, to enhance the yellows and the greens, and make our viewer hungry. We want them to want the sandwich. And I think that we did a really good job between the photo as well as with the editing. Our next photo is going to be this fresh jar of salad and of veggies. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is go in and crop tightly because we are going to be using these for Instagram. And I want to actually cut into this wooden table, into this wooden board. And what I love about this photo is not only how the jar was stylized with this punk lettuce right on top, but also the selection of elements that Kristina used. For example, this particular fork, you can see that it's such an impressive design element. So this fork is actually being targeted towards a very specific audience, an audience that is passionate about art and design and sensitive to small details like this one. So now I'm gonna look through my presets and see which one looks the best. So I think I am between airy and bright and contrast. I'm gonna go with airy and bright only because it looks like an outdoorsy type of veggie salad, and I'm gonna go to my next one. Now the next one has a very similar scene, so I'm actually just going to do exactly the same that I did. I'm gonna crop it in 8 by 10. In this photo I'm gonna do the same. I'm just really going to go through these photos and crop them up. But this photo has something very interesting that I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you a little cool trick. Now for this one, on whichever of the 4 presets I use, all of them get blown out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select bright and poppy, and I'm going to reset down my exposure by double clicking on the word exposure over here to my right hand side. And that's going to zero down that adjustment. Now slowly I'm going to drag it to my right. Around there I think is good. Now this image has some wrinkles on the placemat. That's a really quick fix over here in Lightroom. All we want to do is press Q or go to this small tool over here, which is the healing brush, the spot healing brush, and I'm just going to draw on each and every one of the wrinkles. And don't worry if it doesn't work first bat. I'm just going to make sure that whichever area that Lightroom is grabbing is working. And you're going to do that by pressing H. And H is going to make all of the adjustments appear. So you can actually drag these adjustments and fine-tune them as you want. It's grabbing some part of the tomato, and that's why that strange blue was coming up. But as soon as I adjust it, everything goes back to normal. I'm going to press Q again, and there's our finished image. So I'm going to crop in. I'm actually going to do this one as a square, thinking that Kristina is a graphic designer. I'm sure that she's going to like this circle inside of the square. Now going to my presets. I absolutely love this photo so much. This photo actually works well with all of the 4 presets. So it's a matter of how you're feeling, what your brand is trying to say at the moment that you share this image. And I'm just going to go with contrast. And we can see here how the reds and how the oranges really start popping out, as well as the texture, because it does have some sharpening and clarity to it. On this photo, I'm going to go to crop, and I'm going to do a really tight crop as a square. And what I'm going to do is rotate this image and just really crop in there. And around like here is good, or if that's too much, we can adjust it slightly. Now here, we're going to go and grab one of these. I think that the first one, contrast, works the best. And we can continue adjusting and tweaking this preset just a little bit. We can add some exposure, add a tiny bit of dehaze as well, and continue. Now in this photo, I had some fun cropping it. You can see how important the cropping part is, right? Because the angles really do matter. And over here, the circle from the plate was already cropped in. So what I'm gonna do is follow that cropping and crop in all of the other elements, and this is gonna give me a sense of space in the table. For the filter, I'm just gonna quickly go from one to another, and I'm gonna use airy and bright for this one. I'm gonna do a square crop, and I'm going to rotate this completely. I'm going to crop out the plates on the bottom and on the left, as well as the placemat on the top. And you can see how it looks like a completely different photo just by doing that crop. For this one, I think that I'm going to go with deep colors and high contrast. If it's a little bit too much, we can always eliminate a little bit of contrast and a little bit of exposure. Just adjust again our crop. And I think around there is good. So crop again, tight one, over here. I want to make sure that this is cropped out as well, because I want to avoid any distractions in my viewer's eye. So I'm gonna actually crop it even tighter, and around there is good. And I'm gonna leave it in bright and poppy. And there's good. This one, I'm going to select and see which one works the best. I'm gonna go with deep colors and high contrast. Now the trick that I mentioned to you guys was down in transform, we're gonna look for our vertical slider and do a negative adjustment. Now this slider is really cool because you can see how we adjusted our perspective in just 1 second. Now I'm gonna go to R, or to my crop. I'm gonna leave it at original because I love all of the elements that are going on and how the tomato is being cropped up on top. I don't want to lose that tomato. So I'm going to make sure to crop just where I have a pinch of red, because that red is going to be so important in this photo. It plays a game with the tomato in the salad as well as the tomato as an ingredient. I'm gonna crop this one as a square, and as you can see, it was such a cool idea how Kristina played around with the placemats and with the elements that she already had. So this is a very smart way of doing food photography with the elements you already have. And you can see that she also has a bunch of different types of plates, playful plates, more serious plates, vintage plates, rustic plates, and that's going to play a very important part as storytelling in photography. Now for the preset, I'm going to select deep colors and high contrast. Now we have a set of 3 smoothies. I'm going to go with square crop for all 3 of them. So this is my first one. And I think that any one of the 4 presets work, but I'm going to go with reds and greens, airy and bright. Now the cup is a little bit tilted, so I'm going to fix the correction of the perspective with the same transform tab and the first vertical slider. I'm going to add a positive adjustment this time, and that fixes the angle of the glass. There we go. I'm going to do the exact same thing for this one. We're going to do a square crop. And I want to do a tight square crop. I also want to note how nice she used these ingredients and elements to tell us what's inside of her smoothie. It looks very, very yummy. Now for the presets, I'm going to go with deep colors for this one, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing of just slightly transforming the perspective so the glass is as vertical as possible. I'm going to go with square again, crop in, and because we already, as we go, we start seeing what adjustments each preset does, and I know that for this one I'm going to want to go with deep colors, high contrast. I'm going to diminish a little bit and tweak the preset to make it work for this particular photo. So I diminish the exposure to plus 0.2, and I'm going to go to transform and adjust my vertical to correct the perspective of the glass. Now this photo I absolutely love because of the elements that she used. I love the plates, I love the placemat, and even the spoons. Each and every one plays such an important part in telling us when we're going to be eating this amazing dessert, which it looks like a brunch to me. Now, all of the other elements are a little bit too distracting for me. For example, over here and on the back. So I'm gonna do a square crop, and I'm gonna crop inside. We're gonna do our little trick of cropping out the elements, just to give it that sense that there are more elements in this photo and on the table than what the spectator thinks that there are. I want to make sure that there's no space on the back. I want to make sure to grab some of the spoons, to grab this dish, and of course our main dish right here. Now for the presets, let's take a look which ones look good. I'm gonna go with bright and poppy, and I feel that the blues can be a little bit darker, so there's 2 ways that we can go about this. We can either go to basic and then go to shadows, and we can reduce the shadows over here. We can go to tone curve, and we can go to darks and then just diminish a little bit the darks. You can see how it becomes denser. Or we can also test out the hue, saturation, and luminance. On the luminance, we can just grab our blues and diminish their value. I think that the best one that looks is over here in the tone curve. Let's diminish the darks, and this is going to give us more contrast to the photo. This looks like a Sunday brunch out with the family. I love it. Now these photos are mine, and I wanted to show you how a different set of photos completely from Kristina's photos work as well with the presets. So I'm going to just go through the presets and select one. I'm going to go with bright and poppy. Now the yellows on the fresh mozzarella are a little bit too yellow for me. So I'm going to clean up my whites, and I'm going to do that by going to my tools and my white balance and just adding some blue, which reduces the yellow, the warmth. And you can see how clean and crisp this mint leaf looks like right now after I did this adjustment, as well as the oil keeps and maintains its yellow aspect to it. On this photo, I'm gonna go with bright and poppy, even though all of the presets also look good with it. Same for this one. I feel that all of the presets look good. It really depends on what you're trying to sell and how your Instagram looks, or your social media where you're going to be posting these photos look. And this photo, I selected it because I wanted to show you a little trick. I took these photos with my cell phone, and keeping the square ratio it already has, I'm going to adjust it over here. I want equal parts all around the circle without cutting it. And I'm going to play around with my presets. I'm going to go with airy and bright, but all of my highlights are completely blown out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to reduce my highlights. My whites are a little bit too yellow. So on my white balance, I'm going to reduce my white balance by shifting the slider to the left until I feel that I achieved my whites, and I feel that -10 is good. I'm going to open up a little bit more of the exposure, and I'm going to open up my shadows as well, just so this area really comes out. A little bit more of contrast. Now this area and this area are easily removed by going to our cue or to our healing or spot removal tool. We're going to make sure that we're on clone, and we also want to take a look at where we have a nice area and a nice surface that we want to replicate. It's really important that when you are using clone, that you have this surface or this texture, the same texture that you want to replicate. Because if Lightroom grabs a different texture like it's doing right now, it's gonna look super strange. So I'm gonna drag my sampling area to the white stark plate. Also, I have over here a piece of crumb that fell out, which is super normal in food photography. So I'm gonna go back to heal, and with a brush, I'm just gonna paint on it, making sure to not touch any other elements. I'm gonna press H to hide it, and that's pretty much it. Like magic, it retouches that crumb out. And on my last photo, I'm gonna do a pretty similar adjustment, so I already know that airy and bright works. I'm gonna open up my shadows, add a little bit of contrast, go to my cropping, leave it square, and just crop in. I wanna make emphasis on the circle. And now I have this area which it really distracts me. It's too yellow and the texture is different. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna press M or go to my masks over here. This is gonna bring up our linear masks, and I'm going to remove saturation. So I'm gonna desaturate, and I'm going to add a little bit of exposure just to make sure that the tones match and that there's as least a distraction as possible for my viewer. And those are all of the 20 images edited right there with the 4 presets. On screen, we can see what we learned on this tutorial. Number 1 were 5 steps to easily up your game with food photography. It's easy, it's cheap, you can do it. You just have to look for a creative angle and look for some cool props that you can use. You can also buy the paper or the foam core backgrounds very, very cheaply on Amazon. I'm actually going to put a link down below so you guys can have that quick link to jump to. Number 2 is how to use these 4 free food photography Lightroom presets. Now you know that if it doesn't work right there when you add it to a photo, you can easily tweak the adjustments on the right-hand side of Lightroom. And number 3 is storytelling through elements. With food photography, it's all about storytelling. So if you did like this tutorial and you feel that you learned something new, go ahead and click that subscribe button, because all of this week is all about food photography. And I am Giselle Behrens, bringing you the best tips and tools to edit amazing photos. Bye everybody, see you on the next video.